Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Vimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We're reading this morning from Canto 10, Chapter 1, verse number 25. 10, 1, 25. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vishnur Maya Bhagavati Yaya Samohitam Jagat Adishta Prabhunam Shena Karyarte Sambhavishyati Vishnur Maya Bhagavati Yaya Sammohitam Jagat Adishta Prabhunam Shena Karyarte Sambhavishyati. Translation: the potency of the Lord known as Vishnu Maya, who is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will also appear with Lord Krishna. This potency, acting in different capacities, captivates all the worlds, both material and spiritual. At the request of her master, she will appear with her different potencies in order to execute the work of the Lord. Purport. Parasya Shaktir Vivadaiva Shruyate, Svetashvatara Upanishad. In the Vedas, it is said that the potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called by different names, such as Yogamaya and Mahamaya. Ultimately, however, the Lord's potency is one, exactly as electric potency is one, although it can act both to cool and to heat. The Lord's potency in both the spiritual and material worlds, the Lord's potency acts in both the spiritual and material worlds. In the spiritual world, the Lord's potency works as Yogamaya. And in the material world, the same potency works as Mahamaya. Exactly as electricity works both a heater and a cooler. In the material world, this potency, working as Mahamaya, acts upon the conditioned souls to deprive them more and more of devotional service. It is said, Yaya Samohito Jiva Atmanam Trigunaatmakam. In the material world, the conditioned soul thinks of himself as a product of Triguna, the three modes of material nature. This is the bodily conception of life. Because of associating with the three gunas of the material potency, everyone identifies himself with the body. Someone is thinking he's a Brahmana, someone a Kshatriya, and someone a Vaishya or Shudra. Actually, however, one is neither a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, nor a Shudra. One is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Mame Vangsa. Mame Vangsha. But because of being covered by the material energy, Mahamaya, one identifies himself in these different ways. When the conditioned soul becomes liberated, however, he thinks of himself as the eternal servant of Krishna. Jivera Swarupahai, Krishnara Nityadas. When he comes to that position, the same potency acting as Yogamaya increasingly helps him become purified and devote his energy to the service of the Lord. Paragraph. In either case, whether the soul is conditioned or liberated, the Lord is supreme. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Maya Jakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. It is by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the material energy, the Mahamaya, works upon the conditioned soul. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Quote, the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. Within conditioned life, no one has freedom, but because one is bewildered, being subject to the rule of Mahamaya, one foolishly thinks himself independent. Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. But when the conditioned soul becomes liberated by executing devotional service, he is given a greater and greater chance to relish a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different transcendental statuses such as Dasya-rasa, Sakya-rasa, Vatsalya-rasa, and Madhurya-rasa. Paragraph. Thus, the Lord's potency, Vishnu Maya, has two features. Avaranika, Avaranika and Unmukha. When the Lord appeared, his potency came with him and acted in different ways. She acted as Yogamaya with Yashoda, Devaki, and other intimate relations of the Lord, and she acted in a different way with Kamsa, Salva, and other asuras by the order of Lord Krishna. His potency, Yogamaya, came with him and exhibited different activities according to the time and circumstances. Karyarte Sambhavishyati. Yogamaya acted differently to execute different purposes desired by the Lord. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:13, Mahatmanastamam partha daivim prakritim ashrata. The Mahatmas who fully surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord are directed by Yogamaya, whereas the Duratmas, those who are devoid of devotional service, are directed by Mahamaya. So these verses are verses that are being discussed in the temple. So we're just following along with the verses being discussed in the temple. Yesterday, because of Balaram's appearance day, the prior verse, text 23, was dealing with, what text 24 was dealing with Balaram. So we discussed that yesterday morning. And then next in line, the topic that's being discussed by Maharaj Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit is the appearance of the energy of Krishna. Now, things are moving together. In other words, Balaram is not a potency. Balaram is in direct expansion. First, direct expansion of Krishna. And Krishna can expand himself unlimitedly. And he does in different ways through his energies or him personally or his parts and parcel living entities. He expands himself in many different ways. But the appearance of Balaram, which this weekend, Friday, we'll be observing all over ISKCON, Balaram Jayanti, it's important to understand his position. There's a very short purport in yesterday's verse, but he's not. It's not that Balaram's unimportant. He's very important. And here there's a much longer verse. And this is because the complexity of Krishna's Swarup Shakti, or his personal potency, Swarupa, his personal form, and the potency of his personal form is a little more complex because Balaram always acts in the frame of same as Krishna, in the spiritual frame. Balaram never becomes less. Krishna never becomes less. Even when both Balaram and Krishna appear in this world, they're not diminished they're not touched by being in the material world, although they act, in many cases, they act as if human, which makes it look like, for those of us that are conditioned souls, they're one of us, or we're one of them, or whichever way you look at it. They have a body, they have a form, they have a human-like form, and so it's human-like. The mystery is, well, it may look like that, but please understand, they're not of this world. They're not of them. So that logically, the next verse is describing the comparison of the spiritual and material worlds, and that's manifest, the spiritual world and the material world are manifest by Krishna's energy. To say that they're manifest by Krishna's energy, it doesn't mean that once upon a time there was no spiritual world. And then Krishna looked at his watch and said, you know what? I think I'd like a spiritual world. And then, poof, he manifested the spiritual world. It's not a chronological sequence of events. Rather, there's a description of the relationship, an ontological relationship between the spiritual world and Krishna. And the spiritual world is manifest by his internal potency. And then a difficult thing to understand, a very mysterious thing, is that very same spiritual energy which manifests the eternal spiritual realm, a feature of or a reflection of that spiritual potency, Yogamaya potency, manifests the material world, Mahamaya potency. And so in the purport, the language is not used one and different, but we should understand there's a oneness between Mahamaya and Yogamaya, because one is simply an expansion of the other one, or reflection of the other one. There's not one. You don't have the other without the one. You don't have the material world without the spiritual world. The material world exists because, and on the strength of the existence of the spiritual world. However, the nature of Mahamaya is one doesn't see that connection. One sees disconnection, or one doesn't even see their once upon a time, or the reality of the situation is there is a connection. They don't see the connection. There's only one thing, that's Maya, Mahamaya. That's the nature, the deluding potency, bewildering potency. But the Bhagavatam wants us to understand the connection. Both are energies. And both of those energies are one energy acting this way and acting that way twice in the purport. The first few sentences is like electricity. It's really easy to understand. Electricity is one energy. And an electrician would know how that electricity can make something hot, how the electricity can make something cold. Now, in one sense, going to Sankhya philosophy, what's electricity? Electricity is fire. There's the five, earth, water, fire, air, ether, is in the fire category. Where there's electricity, there's fire. And if electricity gets out of control, you got a fire. However, as an electrician or a manufacturer of some instrument can take that same energy, making heat, making cold, but it's fire that acts this way, acts that way. How an engineer or an electrician understands it's just simply fire, sir. I don't know if they understand that. And exactly what electricity is. They have some idea what it is. They know how to generate electricity. But if you don't generate it from nothing, it's just a transformation of state. From this state to that state. Then there's electricity. And so there's different methods of, electric power plants or solar energy. Now, what's solar energy? It's fire. And how to capture that fire and make electricity. That's something you can build a business on, solar panels. But it's fire. And the principle is fire. And so back to the example of this purport, fire or electricity can make things hot or make things cold. So how can fire make things cold? It's just manipulation, exactly, how the science of it works. You ask the engineer and the designer, but it's electricity that drives it. Supposing you got a refrigerator with no electricity, it's not going to make things cold. It's electricity makes things cold. And then manipulating that electrical energy in a certain way. So that's that metaphor, and then the application of the metaphor is we have these two realms, spiritual and material, manifest by Yogamaya Mahamaya, or the spiritual potency, the spiritual realm acts through the agency of Yogamaya. Here's a nice definition. I learned this from Garuda Prabhu, a Sanskrit scholar, who he wrote a book, and one of the sections of his book is describing what Yogamaya is. It's nice. It's very simple in principle. Yogamaya is an energy of Krishna or an agency of Krishna by which Krishna desires different categories of rasa, different categories of intimacy, of loving exchange, and bringing the different living entities closer to him. Because they have an affinity for being closer to him. there's those that don't. So there's another potency, Mahamaya. But the Yogamaya is, again, a facility, an arrangement by Krishna to bring living entities closer to him. And together they can enjoy exchanges of loving dealing. That's Yogamaya. And that's the spiritual world. And that you can say, take it a little bit further, that's reality. And then there's what's not reality. And not reality is the Mahamaya realm, where there's no connection or worse. So God is dead, or something, I'm God, you're God, or something. Atheism, agnosticism, different isms. That's the mature world. And those that are striving to make that connection with the Supreme stronger, proportionately Yogamaya acts and Mahamaya slackens. It's something like a light switch. Commonly in homes, there's a light switch that's either on or off. It's like, the binary computers, 1 or 0. However, there's another kind of switch, and that's the dimmer switch. And then proportionately more electricity, thus more light, and then less darkness. Or they go the other direction. Less light, more darkness. And that's the relationship of those striving, following standards and procedures and methods, etc., to gradually restore that connection. Turn on the light and turn it up in increments. And then when the light comes on, then one can start to see things that one couldn't see in darkness. Using the Upanishadic metaphors, pots and plates. When there's no light at all, no sunlight, moonlight, or electricity light, it's total darkness. You can't see. You can't see your hand in front of your face. But you can't see anything. But as the light becomes brighter progressively in steps, then you can start to see what you couldn't see. So that's the Yogamaya potency, using that metaphor of a switch, a dimmer switch. The Yogamaya potency is the potency that conducts intimacy, or the facility of Krishna, again, definition, the facility for Krishna, if he so desires, the living entity desires his association more, or being connected with him more, and then there's a dimmer switch, and Krishna moves the dial. But in one sense, the living entity's desire moves the dial, but the agency is the switch. And Krishna controls it. He sanctions it. In that way, he controls it. As these two functions of Supersoul. Anumanta Upadrashta. He sees, drashta, and he sanctions. Anumanta. And so one can be covered, or one can be less covered, or one can be fully uncovered, or fully Krishna conscious. In a dimmer switch kind of metaphor, that's controller is Supersoul, and he moves the switch, resting upon the desire of the living entity to be in relationship with him or forgetful of him. Yogamaya, Mahamaya potencies. There's two terms I wanted to touch on. That's from the purport. This is paragraph number 3. Thus, the Lord's potency, Vishnu Maya, has two features, avaranika and unmukha. Now, there isn't an explanation of what those two terms mean. But commonly, Prabhupada would say that the Mahamaya potency has Vishnu Maya. In the Mahamaya division of Vishnu Maya, there's the covering and the throwing potency. So the Mahamaya is this covering. And then the opposite, unmukha, that's the dimmer switch is up. So one can see, or one can't see because one is covered. And what is one covered by? Vishnu Maya. That feature of Vishnu Maya is Mahamaya. And then one can't see. One may want to see or experience or be connected with, but there's something blocking that seeing or experiencing. And that's the Mahamaya energy. So what to do when you're covered and Mahamaya is blocking you from experiencing or seeing reality? No, the answer is simple. The application is a little involved. The simple answer is by contact with bhakti, or contact with the yoga system in different ways of yoga. Karma yoga, Jnana yoga, Dhyana yoga, bhakti yoga. By linking with the Supreme in prescribed manner, then the covering can be diminished, and ultimately covering can be completely bypassed or superseded, and thus come to the transcendental or the dimmer switch on full position. And that's a relationship with the Supreme. So this unmukha position, or not covered, is covered or not covered, or in degrees covered, somewhere in between. And living entities are in that condition. The modes of nature are coverings. And then there's darker, medium, and less. But still, even in the mode of goodness, still covered. It's not that from the mode of goodness one can see. One can see better what's what. One can't see the Supreme. One can see a likeness of the Supreme in an artist's depiction of something. And therefore, religion of the world has art, depictions of the Supreme, or depictions of heaven, using different language, and then there's pictures of what heaven looks like. But the Bhagavatam, consisting of this Yogamaya potency, the Bhagavatam reveals in detail what's heaven like, and what's Vaikuntha like, and what's Goloka like. Although we haven't been there, we can know what it looks like. There's a very detailed, for example, just give a for example, and then I'll end. For example, in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's one of the discussions is the churning of the milk ocean. And the churning of the milk ocean begins with Indra getting a curse from Durvasa Muni. That's how it begins. Because Durvasa Muni is very proud, but he was honoring the King of Heaven and gave his garland to the King of Heaven. And the King of Heaven didn't take much value, didn't place much value in his garland, so he gave it to his elephant. he decorated the trunk of his elephant, Airavata, with Durvasa Muni's garland. Durvasa Muni cursed him. You're not fit to reside in the heavenly realm. You're going to lose all your material opulence, and the demons will defeat you in battle because you have dishonored a Brahmana. And so it happened. And without all the details, when the demigods lose their positions in heaven, Indra loses his position. Indra is one of Aditi's sons. And other demigods are also Aditi's sons. She is mother of a number of important demigods, Kashyapa and Aditi. So, when the demigods lose their position and their opulence and everything, Aditi goes to her husband. Help. And there's details, and her husband says, because the demigods have now gained the favor of the Brahmana, Shukracharya, they can't be defeated, so don't try. He suggests instead you make truce with them and engage in something that both parties want. What's that? Immortality. Not long life, so long that you can't even count the number of years. It's like immortality because bodies die even if they live a long time. So they make this truce and they start the churning of the milk ocean and so forth and so on. And the narration continues and continues and continues. So she, Aditi, is given a facility by her husband how to please Lord Vishnu, because Vishnu can take care of the problem. And she does what he recommends. And so Vamana appears. There's details. Vamana appears. She says, Lord Vishnu comes and says, I'll take care of it. I'll become your son. I'll take care of it. Don't worry. So when Vamana makes his appearance as the son of Kashyapa and Aditi, he goes to the heavenly realm where Bali Maharaj is ruling, and there's this detailed description of the heavenly realm, in case you wanted to know. It's right in the Bhagavatam. What's it? A little sharing. When I grew up, I didn't know the Bhagavatam. I didn't know anything. But I grew up in a Christian family, and I heard in Sunday school about the kingdom of heaven. So I asked Mom and Dad, what's it like there? They didn't know. They didn't say they didn't know, but they didn't know, etc., etc. So you read the Bhagavatam. And so the king of heaven, the Vaikuntha realm, and the Goloka realm. And what's it like there? Those are different places manifest by the potency of the Supreme Lord. There's different features of that potency. Then besides heaven, there's this realm, that down below this realm, the hellish realm, that's also described. So it's one energy, like electricity, and sometimes electricity can be made to make things warm or hot or burning or cool or frozen. So there's degrees of electricity acting in different ways. So one energy, Vishnu Maya, acting in different ways. And this verse describing Vishnu Maya making appearance is an essential part of the whole first canto, which is Krishna's appearance and then soon Balaram's appearance and the name-giving ceremony and all of that. and then their pastimes together. And it's all Vishnu Maya. That is Yoga Maya, specifically because it's in relation to Krishna directly. To be continued. Any discussion? Yeah. About which?
About the super soul's function.
Yeah, super soul function. Yeah.
Curious to know if the animals are part the sanction it is always there, or how is the Lord designed to sanction or not sanction? Is it only the action, like to give the example of the switch? So is it only the action that is sanctioned or unsanctioned, or
He's independent. He doesn't need rules. However, with his independence, he makes the rules, and he abides by the rules or breaks the rules. So that the rule, which is what your question is karma, based upon my past or each of our past actions. Then the sanctioning happens or doesn't happen. May want to become wealthy. It may not happen. And what's it depend upon? The switch. And he may say, no, you're not eligible.
So he's the controller of karma in that sense?
No. He sanctions.
Okay.
We're responsible for our choices. We bear the responsibility. We make choices. We bear the responsibility for our choices, good or bad, and mixed. So supposing I make some good choices, it's my choice, and the switch is moved or not moved based upon choices I've made. Now, Krishna can break the rules, but that's the rule. I'm deciding. I'm the architect of my good fortune, ill fortune. Sadasad Yoni Janmasu. Because Purusha Prakriti, this is 13:22 Bhagavad Gita. Purusha, the living entity imitating the enjoyer. Purusha Prakriti Stohi, situated in Prakriti. Bhukte, trying to be the enjoyer. Bhukte Prakriti Jan Gunan. Karanam Guna Sangosh. The karana is the modes of nature with which I associate. And based upon the modes of nature, I'm going to make my choices. Good or bad, right or wrong, dharmic or adharmic, divine or demoniac. I'm going to make choices, and I'm held responsible. So back to the initial question, the sanctioning is depending upon eligibility based upon my past choices. So you can say karma or you can say guna and karma. More precisely, it's guna and karma. Guna karma vibhagasha. And then Krishna knows both past, present, future, and then he'll sanction accordingly. Anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki